Our studio guest this hour, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, who's here. Richard, I hardly know where to start, Richard.
It's hard to know where to start. I'm going to say morning. It's not a good morning. It's grey and gloomy out there, and frankly, that's the mood. I mean, the economic numbers out this morning.
All right, let's have a look at that because Rachel, it's 0.1%. It's basically flat. Rachel Reeves saying, well, at least there is some encouraging news.
What she didn't say was when you dig into the detail, which obviously I've done, actually the economy is smaller than it was 3 months ago. It's smaller than it was 6 months ago, which means we are in an effective recession on a sort of overall basis. But per person, thanks to the mass immigration imposed on us by the Tories and now Labour, we're getting poorer rapidly. That's the real issue. And it's funny how the Chancellor seems to have conveniently forgotten that.
Well, she's saying that based on these numbers today, it's proof that she just needs to go harder and faster with the plan that she has in place.
Well,
do you think she has the right plan?
Given that the economy's fallen in 3 months since August 24, when she was Chancellor, actually we've got to do a U-turn. Businesses are reducing investment, sadly they are reducing jobs, and confidence is falling. The bond markets are on high alert. So no, she's got to do a U-turn. We can't tax and spend our way out of this crisis. They're wasting money all over the place. And, just the government waste is legendary. And the typical is the £100 million bat shed. It's all you need to know to realise that waste is ludicrously obscene.
Yeah, she would say they're not on tax and spend and they're sticking to their fiscal rules. And in terms of investment, one thing which is being announced today, several, $2 billion, I think, investment in Bristol to a scheme there, several hundred million, I think it is, in Sunderland, and car manufacturing there. So they're saying this foreign investment is coming in.
Look, they can say whatever they want, but the reality is the business people I talk to, they are furious at what they feel is the betrayal of the blunder budget. They've got much higher costs, higher taxes, higher regulation, and for too many of them, the extra risk just doesn't pay. And so people are reducing investment plans.
Can I ask you about the grooming gangs scandal? Because you just heard there from Jonathan Reynolds from the Labour Party. He's talking about action and implementing the recommendations of the ICSA inquiry that has gone before us. The Reform had promised a private inquiry into grooming gangs if there isn't going to be a new national inquiry from the Labour Party. Do you stand by that promise?
Absolutely, we do. We hope the government will do the right thing and admit they've got it wrong, misjudge the public mood. The public mood wants a significant, independent public inquiry into the child rape gangs, specifically. The ICSA report was a much bigger, broader report. So yes, if the government, we've given them to the end of January, if they don't do a U-turn, I think they will. They might tweak the wording of it and call it something else. I think they're going to change course. If not, then we will launch our own independent inquiry. And
is that anything more than a political gimmick, though, in the sense that the whole point of having a government-led inquiry is that you can compel people to be involved, and you can't on a private one?
Correct. But what we would say is, well, if we call people to give witness and they decline to, I wonder why. What have you got to hide? Why not be honest? I think it's more like a sort of a truth and reconciliation committee, because victims and survivors, who are the critical people here, they want answers. In many towns where we haven't had the inquiries, we don't know the truth. And the horror of this is it's still going on. And that's why you need an inquiry, so that people can come forward and say, this is going on now in this town and it's got to stop.
Talking of crimes, it's in The Sun this morning. I know you will have seen it. Jimmy Mizzen, and you remember the case from 2008, this schoolboy stabbed to death. It would appear to be sort of either mistaken identity or what, I don't know, but completely innocent boy stabbed to death. And his killer, who seems to be sort of out on licence or whatever at the moment, has not only released music that has appeared on the BBC, but it's music which is glorifying the stabbing of someone. It's beyond belief, actually, that this could ever happen.
It is beyond belief. First of all, what's he doing out? That's give or take 15 years ago. That's not enough. If you murder anybody, let alone a child, 15 years is just not enough. And so that's appalling. And then what the BBC think they do, frankly, it's just, once again, they've got it wrong. It's awful at every single level you could possibly conceive.
You'll be familiar with the YouGov poll out this week. It showed that Reform is just 1 point behind Labour. Suella Braverman yesterday reacting to that poll, saying that the Tories and Reform need to come together now. They need to work in a coalition to bring down the Labour Party. Would you be open to that?
We can't work with people who believe in the madness of net zero, and I reckon 2/3 of
Kemi Badenoch today talking about maybe watering it down.
But also many of the, what I call the Lib Dem Tories on the parliamentary benches, they still believe that mass immigration's a good thing. Now, if they're going to do a major U-turn and realise that actually Reform and Nigel and myself are right, that net zero is net stupid, then they're kind of coming towards our direction because they recognise that our policies are the right policies to make Britain, frankly, grow again.
What do you make then of Kemi Badenoch? I mean, specifically on the 2050 net zero target, she's saying if these targets were set without any understanding of how to achieve them, and so she's wanting a rewrite on that. She wanted to draw a line in the sand.
So, I mean, what we want from her is an apology that she was part of a government and a party that damaged Britain in every single possible way and has made us poorer. Well, I mean, frankly, that's what people want, a bit of clear honesty. And they have, she claims to be an engineer, but the truth is that they have made us all poorer with these ludicrous net zero things. I don't want to delaying it 5 or 10 years. Scrap the whole wretched thing. It's making us poorer. It's putting our bills up. It's the main reason for the cost of living crisis. Scrap net zero, you get lower bills, lower cost of living. Simple as that.
I know you've faced these questions before, but I mean, we're going to be reflecting on it again in a second with our political editor. But this NHS crisis, the RCN, this absolutely damning report. What's Reform's take on this? Because the one criticism Reform has faced in the run-up to the election and since is that you're very strong on certain issues. However, have you got properly formed out policies on what you would do with a behemoth the size of the NHS?
Well, interestingly, at the beginning of the election campaign, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, basically copied some of our policies. We said healthcare needs fundamental reform in this country. We said you've got to use much more of the independent healthcare sector. We actually because of where we were going to save money, we could put more money into healthcare, but not into an unreformed NHS. And what the NHS should be doing is it should be essentially commissioning and buying lots of operations and appointments and consultants' appointments from the independent sector to get these waiting lists down. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, who's a good man, he's trying his best, but he's gone very quiet on his previous pledges. And I want him to do that, because that's the only way we're going to get these lists down.
But that's a massive mix of short-term solution and long-term strategy.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight, which in fairness, he's not claiming it will. But if you're not brave enough to say the NHS needs fundamental reform and we've got to use the independent healthcare sector and make that grow and incentivise people to go down the self-pay route with tax relief and things like that, which is what's in our contract, then we can make some progress and ease the pressure on the NHS for more emergency care. Otherwise, we're just going to see more of the same, however much money you throw into the black hole of the NHS.
Let's stick with health, shall we? And Matt Hancock is going to be given evidence today in front of the COVID inquiry. The focus today is going to be on vaccines, the vaccine injured and those who died in the pandemic. What would you like to see happen in that instance to those who were injured and those who died?
Well, we've got to have some changes to the vaccine compensation scheme. I'd like an apology, actually, from Mr Hancock. I mean, what he did during that was utterly just horrendous at every level. And I think we've got to have more honesty that, whilst the vaccine was safe, and if it was safe for many people, we have to be honest that for some people, and probably a larger number of people than many would like to admit, actually it has caused harm, and therefore you've got to look at the compensation scheme. And these are difficult issues for many people, including many professionals who at the time bought into the consensus establishment narrative.
But that's the same with any medicine.
It is,
isn't it? And any vaccine and any medicine
correct.
at all. But is the sense that not that something was necessarily done wrong in one sense, but the fact that it was so mandated? Is that part of the issue?
That's the point. If you'd been more honest with people, saying, look, this is an urgent vaccine And we think that it's appropriate for what was originally said, which was the elderly, I think above the sort of 65, 70s. But then the narrative changed, and all of a sudden they wanted everybody to be vaccinated, and we stood against that. We said we don't think that's appropriate, in particular all the way down to children. And I think some very bad stuff took place. So I just think we have to be honest about people. Say, look, it's urgent. This is an emergency vaccine. We think it's right, but equally, it's got to be a voluntary basis.